Hello, everyone, and welcome to Education in Focus, powered by Chalkboard News. I'm Dan McCaleb, Vice President of News and Content at the Franklin News Foundation, publisher of ChalkboardNews.com. Chalkboard is a news website dedicated to issues related to K-12 education. And joining me again today is Brendan Clary, Chalkboard's K-12 editor. How are you, Brendan?
I'm doing all right, Dan. Getting over a little bit of a cold here.
I can hear it. Yeah, tis the season, right?
It is.
We got some snow this past week, and it's cold today in northern Illinois, I should say. We're recording this on Tuesday, November 28th. Brendan, you wrote over the holiday weekend about new polling from the Center Square and Noble Predictive Insights. The Center Square is a sister site of Chalkboard News, and both are part of the Franklin News Foundation. The poll asked more than 2,500 voters from across the U.S. about the current debate going on in schools about whether educators should inform parents when their child wants to change their gender identity at school. The results were pretty one-sided. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Dan, it was really interesting. The majority of voters, registered voters, they said that parents should know if there are any changes to a student's gender identification or preferred pronouns. 66% of voters said yes, parents should be informed by teachers. And only 19% said no, and only 14% said that they were not sure. So it was just very overwhelming in terms of we had more than 50%. It was 66% of voters, 2/3 were saying, yeah, parents have the right to know what's going on with their student. And that's been a big issue in recent months, recent years as well. Like we've seen some policies that have been implemented by school districts, put in place. And even states like California has some guidance on its education department's website about protecting students. And so there's this language there of protecting students. But what that sometimes translates into is, a student says to a guidance counselor or somebody at school, these are my preferred pronouns and this is my new gender identity, but don't tell my parents. And so that starts to create a rift. And so some districts have, said we want to protect children and be there and be a supportive environment. And that's what advocates say, is important for these students. But then, on the other side, you have parents saying, no, I have the right to know what's going on with my students. So it's become pretty politicized in recent years. We've seen this play out in school boards in California as well as across the country. But it's just very interesting to hear from, so many voters nationwide that there's widespread support for parental notification or, just that parents should know what's going on with their students in school.
And the polling results included demographic breakdowns, Brendan, not, based on race, based on sex, based on age of voters, based on location of the country. And pretty much all of those breakdowns, all of the groups involved in those breakdowns, maybe not at the 66% range, but most of them, or all of them, I think, were in favor of parental notification or said parents should be notified when the issue comes up in schools. So you want to break any of those down? Anything stand out?
Well, with the exception of Democrats, I believe only 49% of Democrats were supportive of that. So they were the lowest by far. So 49% of Democrats supported that. So they didn't have a majority of Democrat voters saying, yeah, we want parental notification, only 49%, but only 30% opposed it. So there's not a lot of strong feelings necessarily, but they definitely had that demographic definitely had the least amount of support for parental notification.
Well, even among Democrats who in blue states, some of these blue states, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, have been pushing against parental notification. Even among Democrats, 19% more support parental notification, 49% in total, 30%, 90% fewer oppose it.
And that was the least out of any of these demographics. Yeah, and Republican and independent voters, they overwhelmingly supported the parental notification measures, right? So 83% of Republicans support this, 62% of independents. And, the last time I talked to Mike Noble of Noble Predictive Insights, he said the independents are the important factor in these in elections, right? Because they are the ones who they move the needle, right? And so when you're talking about school board elections, when you're talking about, presidential campaigns, the different kinds of platforms that candidates might run on, this is, maybe something they're going to talk about. And that's something that we've seen in recent years is parental rights. A lot of different candidates have said, I support parental rights. And you've seen maybe a sort of a politicization of this with some successes, right? And so that's something to watch. And yeah, so that was, a very interesting thing. And I mean, you mentioned too some of the geographically, right, of the South sort of had the highest percentage of voters supported the policy with 69%. That was followed by the Midwest. I can't talk here. The Midwest at 66%. Voters in the West supported the parental notification measures at 65%, and then the Northeast was the lowest at 64%.
Well, let's talk about the West, because California is the most prominent one that comes to mind, that is preventing school districts from making their own decisions on this topic and requiring school districts not to notify parents when a child essentially says that they are a different gender than the one they were assigned at birth. Polling like this, vast majorities of people support parental choice, but California is sort of bucking what voters want. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's been an interesting, development. So, I mean, we saw, let's say, like the Chino Valley School Board. I think there was a couple of other ones in California where the school board voted to require parental notifications and make that a policy. And then we saw sort of a swift backlash. We saw a swift movement from the state government. In this case, it was the attorney general who filed a lawsuit against the school board to try to, block that. And a judge ruled to block that policy while the litigation continues. So essentially, the state of California has said that we do not want schools to be able to make these kinds of choices to notify parents. And that is, exactly what you were saying. It's going against what the majority of voters want, in the West of the Western region of, the United States, but also nationwide, right? 66% of voters want parents to know. And so that's, that is a surprising trend to see, kind of taking that other side there and really putting that line in the sand, right?
Well, it'd be interesting to see whether, parents who obviously overwhelmingly support parental notification, what they do in states like California where parents are being prevented from being informed about a child's decision at school. But Brendan, that is all the time we have. Listeners can keep up with this story and all stories related to K-12 education at chalkboardnews.com. For Brendan Clary, I'm Dan McCaleb. Please subscribe. Thank you for listening.
Do you care about school spending, classroom curriculums, and transparency policies in education, but find it hard to cut through the partisan noise? The nonprofit Franklin News Foundation is bringing you straight news reporting on education through Chalkboard News. We're talking news without spin. Franklin brings fact-based news that makes sense to everyday parents, teachers, and readers who have skin in the game. By donating to Franklin, you can help American families and communities receive the education-focused news they deserve. Become a supporter today at franklinnews.org/donate.